would like to say welcome to the next session on how to use Islamic finance to support the water sector. And we have an array of experts that are going to be moderated by my dear colleague, Dr. Nizar Zaid. Can we give him a round of applause and a warm welcome? And I'm handing over to him so that he can introduce our guests and facilitate the discussion for the next 1 hour. And around 12:30, we shall be closing. Nizar, welcome.
Thank you very much, dear Jamil. As usual, very dynamic and effective. We are, according to the program, we are losing 15 minutes. So either we'll take this from the lunch, or we'll have to find a way, actually, or we'll squeeze our discussion. Welcome, good morning, everyone, all over the world. I hope you are listening to us. Apologies to our colleagues online for some technical glitches. We are working on these, and hopefully this will be solved over time. I would like also to inform everyone that this session, like the other session, will be recorded, and I hope everyone agrees to that. So for this session, we are having 4 in-person speakers and 1 speaker online. Let's start, starting from my left, we have Dr. Marjan Mohammed. Dr. Marjan is the Deputy President Research in ISRA. ISRA stands for International Sharia Research Academy. And she in Seattle, Malaysia. She flew all the way from Malaysia for this event. She's a respected scholar in Islamic finance, and she led previously ISRA's research, and she currently serves as Malaysia Top Sharia Advisory Council. Very impressive. Next to her, we have Mustafa Adil. Mustafa is leading actually the Islamic finance in the London Stock Exchange. I want to ask you how is the market is doing this week or last week? How is it doing? But we'll talk more about Islamic finance and sukuk and other things. The third speaker is Christian Gucker. He's Chief Risk Officer in Sedco Capital, a company here based in Jeddah, actually, in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah and Riyadh and Luxembourg. And actually, Christian, when I looked at his CV, he has a special combination of Islamic finance, but also, commercial banking, etc. Because he worked, I think, in Switzerland and Man, etc. And so he has an experience in Islamic banking and commercial banking, I would say, and his perspective will be very, very useful. Also, we have in the team someone who is very, very involved in this event, basically. Furkan Kavunchu, he's water policy analyst at the OECD Environment Directorate, and he's been working on financing water and development economics. He helped with the produce on the background works. Last but not least, we have online Dr. Azhar Aslam. He's country head of Islamic banking in Standard Chartered Pakistan. He has over 2 decades actually in banking, and I hope he was able to connect with us. Could you confirm to us, Dr. Azhar, that you are online? Could you? Can he open his mic?
Yes, I'm online. Am I
Do you think, is he connected? Can you check, please, Dr. Azhar Aslam? Okay. So,
yeah, can you
I don't want to talk too much about it. Just few words. And I think we heard this in the background and in the discussion today. The Islamic financial industry is estimated at $3.2, $3.4 billion has been assessed at $3.4 trillion in 2024 by IFSB. It's quite a large amount. The question here for us on this panel, how can we tap part of this? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities for tapping part of these resources to the water sector? This is really what the discussion will be all around. So my first question will be to Dr. Marjan, and to tell us actually about how water as a catalyst for ESG impact. What are the Sharia compliant solutions for financing the water sector? And we'll give you 5 minutes to enrich the audience here online and here in person and online about this aspect. The floor is yours. You want to? Okay, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Thank you, Dr. Nizar. So we have heard this morning about the importance of water financing. According to the United Nations, water scarcity affects 40% of the global population. experts also warn that by 2030, demand for global fresh water will exceed supply of 40%. So how do we close this gap while advancing equity and sustainability via Islamic finance and adhering to the ESG framework? What we have to be mindful is that water is not just a resource, rather it is right, trust, and public good. Sharia compliant solutions offered by Islamic finance share the same DNA with ESG, which is ethical stewardship, social justice, well-being, and sustainable. So Islamic finance does not need to retrofit itself to ESG, for ESG principles have been embedded in our faith-based financial system from the very beginning. We are simply reconnecting with our ethical DNA. The financing of water infrastructure and access is deeply aligned with the objectives of Islamic law, or what we call as maqasid, particularly in the preservation of life, environment, and wealth. In the Quranic verses that were read at the beginning of this roundtable, God the Almighty mentioned that we send down water from the sky and create the earth, every kind of noble creature in pairs. There are many other verses emphasizing water as a crucially important and valuable resource that must be maintained and preserved, as it is the source of life for humans, animals, and plants. Unfortunately, people do not appreciate as they should, because God has provided water for free by means of rivers, lakes, and rainfall. Hence, preserving water is a must, as God has already specified that water, unlike other natural resources such as agricultural and animal resources, does not increase. But what is it about ESG and water financing gap? We know that historically, water sector is underfinanced despite the growing ESG commitments. And also, we must admit that Islamic finance contribution to water is also minimal, yet the liquidity and funding potential is large. Among the key barriers are because water is seen as a public good, with political sensitivity around the pricing. In addition, revenue generation from water utilities is also limited due to affordability concerns for consumers. Long payback periods where water infrastructure projects are normally capital intensive but slow in generating returns. Risk perception has been highlighted in session 1 also, especially in developing countries, due to governance, regulatory, and operational challenges. These are the key barriers when it comes to why Islamic financial instruments, Sharia compliant solutions, are still minimal when it comes to water financing. But we must admit that despite the barriers that I mentioned, Sharia compliant solutions for water offer strategic propositions thanks to the main attributes of Islamic finance and its innovative instruments that have been mentioned by some of the speakers in session 1 just now. We know that there are many applicable instruments like green and blue sukuk, as well as Islamic syndicated financing using different Sharia contracts such as ijarah and istisna are suitable for water infrastructure and sustainability projects. Islamic endowment, either in the form of asset wakaf or cash wakaf for community water access, is also available. And this is has long been practiced during the time of the Prophet, our Prophet Muhammad, whereby there was instances whereby war was being endowed. And also, there was water-based water canal, which was developed and during the Abbasid Caliph in the year of 800. Apart from that, we also have charity-based funds such as zakat and sadaqah, as well as corporate social responsibilities, whereby they can be utilized for poverty-linked water solutions. Examples of this have been provided and have been implemented in Malaysia, whereby one of the Islamic banks in Malaysia, Maybank Islamic, collaborated with a non-profit organization, Mercy Malaysia, providing water, sanitary, and health solution to underprivileged community using zakat money. And also, one of the instruments mentioned is the blended finance models and matching funds, which merge capital, commercial as well as philanthropic capital. Yet, there are challenges moving ahead. One of it is the absence of an integrated Islamic finance framework for water financing. Therefore, there is a dire need to have an end-to-end framework covering financing instrument, Sharia governance standards specific to water and environmental projects, as well as clear key success factors to ensure financial viability, social impact, and environmental sustainability. Second challenge that I would like to highlight here is lack of transparent monitoring and governance mechanism. So in order to strengthen investor confidence and public trust, water financing project must embed first transparent reporting on fund utilization. For example, in the case of sukuk issuance, there should be post-sukuk disclosure. Second, impact measurement frameworks align with the maqasid and also ESG metrics. Third, independent Sharia governance and compliance review. And fourth, regular monitoring and evaluation mechanisms beyond financial performance. These include environmental and social outcomes. To conclude, I would like to quote one of the narrations from the Prophet Muhammad, where he says, "The best charity is giving water to drink." But in our modern context today, water financing goes beyond an act of charity. Aligning water financing with Islamic finance is a strategic investment that safeguards social well-being and contributes to long-term health of our planet and preservation of water for future generations. I stop here for a moment. Thank you very much.
So if I hear you well, water financing goes beyond charity for a strategic investment in this sector. Thank you very much, Dr. Marjan. We move now to the next speaker, our colleague from OECD, Furkan. He's been working a lot actually on the studies and doing a lot of research. So I'm giving you a challenge to present your research in 5 minutes, please, to tell us what's the situation, where do we stand, what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, it's a great pleasure of mine to speak before you today as part of this valuable panel. I would like to share a few reflections on 3 key points based on our analytical research on leveraging Islamic finance for sustainable water investments, which you can find, by the way, on the webpage of the Roundtable. First, the current state of play in the use of Islamic finance for water investments. Second, the reasons why Islamic finance has not yet been deployed at scale for water so far, including some of the key barriers. And third, the promising pathways and Islamic financial instruments that could help unlock the full potential of Islamic finance in supporting sustainable water investments. Islamic finance presents an increasingly significant opportunity for sustainable water investments. Over the past 2 decades, the global Islamic finance industry has grown substantially from approximately $200 billion in 2000 to $3.4 trillion in 2023. Despite this steady growth, water-related investments still remain a marginal component. Islamic banking, the largest sector of the Islamic banking industry, for instance, allocates just 0.2% of its total financing to water supply, sewage, and waste management, according to the data from the Islamic Financial Services Board. Here, it is important to note that some water investments may be classified under other industries rather than water, such as irrigation under agricultural sector or hydropower under energy sector. However, the bottom line is the share dedicated to water investments overall is still marginal. Similarly, Islamic Development Finance, directed specifically to water-related investments, in the period of 2019 to 2023, is about 2.3%, when including hydroelectric power units and agricultural water resources, according to the total official support for sustainable development data. So these figures indicate the untapped potential of Islamic finance for water, particularly given the synergies between Islamic finance principles, such as risk sharing, asset-backed structures, and most importantly, social responsibility with the objectives of sustainable water investments. However, in our analysis, we detected several barriers currently limiting this expansion of Islamic finance into waters. These include regulatory fragmentation on certain Islamic finance instruments, insufficient awareness among stakeholders within the global finance community and water community about Islamic finance mechanisms, and limited market size and liquidity in certain jurisdictions. Additionally, data gaps are presenting another challenge here. Yet, there are promising pathways and Islamic financing instruments that can support the expansion of Islamic finance in water investments. I would now like to focus on several of these key instruments, as mentioned by Dr. Marjan, Sukuk, plus public-private partnerships, including Islamic finance structures and Islamic social finance instruments. First, as mentioned by Dr. Marjan, green and sustainable Sukuk are rapidly expanding. Notably, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Gulf countries have increasingly leveraged Sukuk. One example, even though it's not labeled as green or sustainable, but Air Selangor in Malaysia issued Sukuk Kalestrian, which valued at $486 million in September 2023. This demonstrates how Sukuk can be used successfully to finance large-scale water investments. Second, public-private partnerships involving Islamic finance contracts can offer strategic avenues. Through the enhanced risk sharing and asset-backed components inherently from Islamic finance contracts, PPPs involving Islamic finance provide opportunities for more transparent and sustainable water PPPs, where risks are fairly shared between public and private stakeholders. Additionally, it is important to note that the coexistence of Islamic finance with conventional finance mechanisms, referred to as parallel financing, is possible, and moreover, it offers viable solutions for water investments in need for financing. Examples like Patrient hydropower project in Pakistan and the Red Sea Utilities project in Saudi Arabia highlight the suitability of Islamic finance for water PPPs. Third, the Islamic social finance instruments such as Zakat, Waqf, particularly Cash Waqf, and Kardasan are suitable for high-impact, small-scale, or household-level water investments, reaching out to vulnerable rural population. In Indonesia alone, zakat is estimated to hold annual potential of $32 billion annually. The National Board of Zakat for Republic of Indonesia, namely Basnas, has already proved how zakat can be mobilized to fund water for vulnerable populations. To fully leverage Islamic finance for water investments, concerted actions may be beneficial here. Strengthening policy frameworks and harmonizing regulatory standards internationally, improving the tracking of the resource allocation, enhancing data collection, transparency around Islamic finance activities globally, especially in sustainable investments, fostering awareness and capacity building among financial institutions, governments, and development partners. To conclude, Islamic finance holds considerable untapped potential to contribute to sustainable water investments, both through its growing market size and its inherent synergies in long-term equitable investments with the development goals. While barriers remain, targeted efforts to strengthen policy, improve data, and expand stakeholder capacity can help position Islamic finance as a meaningful lever in advancing water security globally. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Furqan, for this very good summary. You mentioned in your presentation that okay, the Islamic finance sector Islamic finance industry is financing to the water sector is limited, but you said that the green sukuk particularly is growing at a high speed, and this gives me a good transition actually to ask the question to Mustafa Adil. He works, as I said, in the London Stock Exchange and the Islamic financial market, to tell us how to harness the potential of sukuk for water investments. So please, the floor is yours, and let's make it to 5 minutes, please. Thank you. So that people go on time for lunch.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. No, of course, I will try to limit it to 5 minutes because, you know, the worst thing you can do is be the person who is stopping the audience from their lunch break, especially after so many discussions there. But I think, as the previous speakers have mentioned, there are so many different financial instruments within the Islamic finance industry that can be utilized, but each of them have referred to sukuk as being a particular instrument of interest, a fast-growing instrument, and one that is being increasingly leveraged. Now, for those in the audience who don't know, sukuk is in essence a Sharia-compliant structure to what would be considered a conventional bond, and it operates very similar in that manner. It is the primary financial instrument that we use in Islamic capital markets, and is being leveraged to facilitate and draw in capital to many of the different areas of development that the broader Islamic finance markets need to focus on developing. You know, we've heard about the size of the global Islamic finance industry, and sukuk certainly is one of the largest segments or components of that. As of end of 2024, global sukuk outstanding stood at about 945 billion. So almost $1 trillion of issuances that were outstanding. It grew at a rate of 10% in 2024. And over the last 5 years, it has been growing at a rate of about 12% year on year. And what we project through our research is that it's expected to exceed $1.5 trillion by 2028. So it is one of the fastest growing segments, one of the fastest growing instruments within the Islamic finance industry. Now, within the sukuk space, one of the fastest growing trends is the emergence of ESG or sustainability or green sukuk, right? These are sukuks that are issued in line with the principles of sustainability. Currently, as of the end of 2024, it stands at about $50 billion, so roughly 5% of global sukuk outstanding, but it's been growing at a CAGR or year-on-year growth of about 50% over the last 5 years. So it has grown exponentially. In fact, 5 years ago, total green or ESG sukuk issuances stood at about $5 billion. Today, they stand at about $50 billion, so a tenfold increase in that. And we're seeing a number of catalysts that are helping to drive that growth. We are seeing markets, Islamic finance markets, issue standards and guidelines and regulations that can help facilitate and provide guidance to the community for the issuance of these instruments. We are seeing international standard setting bodies such as IsDB, who have done a collaboration with ICMA and LSEG to issue standards and guidelines on issuance of green sukuk. We are seeing international standard setting bodies also issuing guidelines on how to issue green sukuks and subcomponents of that. So we're seeing a lot of activity develop this and go forward. The only thing that I would add is that currently there is a strong concentration of ESG and green sukuk issuance in some key markets. So collectively, Malaysia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the Islamic Development Bank account for about almost 90% of total ESG and green sukuk issuances. So that is still very highly concentrated. These countries have been issuing both at a sovereign level and at a corporate level. So you will see a lot of corporates in those markets also issuing sukuk. Indonesia has led a program of issuing green retail sukuk. So you see the capital markets tapping into retail investors to be able to fund these sustainability projects. So there's a lot of innovation that is taking place, but there is a concentration that needs to expand out. Now, having said that, what percentage of that green sukuk issuance is targeted towards water projects? Unfortunately, very, very little. There are no green sukuks that are issued that are targeting specifically water projects. And at most, you'll have a certain allocation of some of the more general sustainability sukuks that are geared towards incorporating water considerations into their frameworks. Primarily, green sukuk make up the largest issuance of sustainability-linked sukuk at about 35%, and the rest are either social sukuk, transition sukuk, or general sustainability sukuks that are being issued, right? We do have some examples of some of the key Islamic finance markets issuing water-linked bonds. For example, Indonesia has issued a water or blue bond that they call, but we haven't seen sukuk being directed in this area. And that is particularly concerning. I mean, we heard earlier today how important water is from an Islamic perspective, right? Water from the Quranic language is highlighted as a building block of life. It's constantly referred to as a blessing. And when we look at the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, even if you find yourself at the bed of a flowing river, you are still instructed and advised to preserve water, right? So even if we find ourselves in a situation of abundance, we should still be looking to preserve. So how does that contrast with our situation today, where globally 4 billion people do not have access to clean drinking water, where we understand at a global level the scarcity of water that exists on our planet? How much more important is it for us to be able to look to preserve water today? So what can we do from a practical perspective to help address this issue and direct some of this capital towards these initiatives? Well, the first and the most important thing, which was highlighted by some of the other speakers, is awareness, right? We need to have greater awareness amongst the investor community, amongst the issuer community, amongst governments about how to direct these assets from very, very generic and general sustainability projects towards specific initiatives that can help tackle the water challenge that we face. The second is around standards. And the creation of standards, particularly international standards, can help to clarify, to simplify, and to standardize the issuance of these instruments, and also the use of proceeds and the ongoing monitoring that issuers will need to do. Capacity building has been highlighted as a key challenge, and I know that capacity building is something that many institutions are looking at to address through technical grants and others to be able to help enhance the capability of different markets to be able to tackle this challenge. And then lastly, but I think very, very importantly, I think flagship issuances become very significant, right? Having perhaps the first issuance by an institution like Islamic Development Bank, having institutions by sovereign entities. We have seen the impact on the ESG sukuk through the issuance of the first sovereign issuance, the first corporate issuance, and so on. And we would like to see something similar in the water sukuk or blue sukuk area as well, through the issuance of flagship issuances that can spur the market and give a benchmark for how they can proceed with that. With that, I'd like to thank the organizers. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, dear Mustafa, for this quick presentation about the sukuk. I could take from your presentation that there are very limited sukuk allocation to the water sector, despite the importance of the water sector in for the Islamic faith, basically. Now we move to another speaker, Christian Gukel. Christian actually is working in Jeddah, actually. He's the closest physically to us. And he's been working actually with Sedco company on Sharia compliant products. But he has also worked in conventional banking previously and conventional financial sector. So the question to you, Christian, is what are the similarities and the differences between Islamic finance and responsible investment? This is the first part of the question. And then what are the actions which could be taken and by whom to harness this potential of Islamic finance for sustainable investments? Because we've heard over the 2 or 3 presentations previously that there is this potential, but there's a problem of transform on this. Could you please enlighten us on that, please? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So we have always stressed the similarities between Sharia compliant and responsible or socially responsible investment as an asset manager, Sedco Capital. So over 20 years. So that's why we decided to become the first Sharia compliant asset manager to be a signatory of UNPRI. That was in 2014. And we were also the first Sharia compliant signatory of UNPRI in Saudi Arabia. So we integrate Sharia compliance and SRI and refer to that concept of integration as prudent ethical investing. We have shown also in research papers that this is a very interesting concept that is beyond the pure Sharia investment angle as well as the pure socially responsible investment angle, because it's a compelling concept that can deliver interesting risk-adjusted performance for investors. So that's why we think it's it can help us to be independent of investor preferences, while we are of course still catering to the Sharia compliant and the responsible investment audience. To give a few examples from our investment business, so on similarities and differences. So for example, if we take public equity portfolios that we manage globally, one of the similarities between socially responsible investment and Sharia compliance is the exclusion of the so-called thin sectors. That is a concept essentially where socially responsible investors have started, similar to Islamic finance, excluding weapons, alcohol, tobacco, for example. So that is an overlap. And in terms of risk-adjusted returns, actually research from 15, 20 years ago has shown that this has lowered return expectations. Recently, I would say the results are a bit more favorable towards the exclusion. Then you have the element of balance sheet constraints. So balance sheet constraints, for example, a restriction on leverage that Sharia responsible investors, Sharia compliant investors bring in. Is also a restriction on receivables on the balance sheet, and this has a very interesting feature. It improves the quality and growth characteristics of portfolios. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Lower leverage reduces probability of default, but it also improves cash supported earnings. So overall, quality characteristics. And it can also help with that quality characteristics to improve risk-adjusted returns. That has well shown. An interesting feature is not just average risk-adjusted returns, but performance in bad times actually improves. And then you have the element of ESG integration. So that was new to us as Sharia compliant investors, has very well been demonstrated to improve risk-adjusted returns. So overall, what we have seen in our investment practice, and as I said, we have shown that in research, is that the net effect is positive. So it can improve risk-adjusted returns. So it's an interesting feature beyond the pure Sharia compliance, beyond the pure SRI approach. To give another example from our investment practice in real estate, we have about 7-8 years ago constructed a school in Jeddah based as a build-to-suit project, and the idea for us was that the Saudi real estate sector would migrate towards the stringent energy efficiency requirements for real estate that we see, for example, in Europe or US. So we have put an emphasis on energy efficiency, also water efficiency. We have sought LEED certification, and that was a very interesting opportunity. We were somewhat ahead of the curve in this market.
Okay, maybe I will not go to the podium. I'll be sitting, and I wonder whether Azhar Aslam is with us online from Pakistan or not. Are we? Can you hear us, Azhar? Could you please react? Is he connected?
Yes.
Oh yes, excellent. You hear
Can
us?
you hear me?
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for being patient with us. So, dear Azhar, you are actually working in Pakistan, one of the largest Muslim countries in the world, with 255 million people living there. So it's potentially 255 million customers. Could you please tell us how can Islamic finance play a role in developing a country like Pakistan to facilitate water investments, and how Islamic banking could be leveraged for water investments as well? Thank you. I think you are on mute. I cannot hear. I don't know. No one can hear him. Azhar, do you hear us?
Yes, yes. Can you, I couldn't
Yes, yes,
unmute
perfect.
myself.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak online on this important roundtable conference. I'm really grateful to OECD and IsDB for this opportunity. So, your question regarding what Islamic banking can do in a country like Pakistan. So, I won't cover the important points that my colleagues have already covered in their presentations. But I do want to highlight one thing which may not have been mentioned, is that how well Islamic finance or the Maqasid-e-Sharia are aligned to the overall piece of ethical banking and ethical finance. And what important role can Islamic banking play, including sustainable water projects and infrastructures like reservoirs. And how well it is aligned to the SDG 6, which is about clean water availability. Now, a country like Pakistan, where there has been historic judgment of April of 2022, exactly 3 years ago, when the highest court in the country passed a judgment almost after 3 decades of discussions that as per the constitution of the country, riba is prohibited in Pakistan. And for the last 3 years or so, there has been a concerted effort spearheaded by the Central Bank of Pakistan to convert the entire financial ecosystem of the country to Sharia compliant solutions by December 2027. We are in mid of that 5-year journey, and a lot of work has been done across various stakeholders, including the central bank, the bankers, the Sharia scholars, product partners, legal community, and obviously the government itself. Now, Islamic banking in Pakistan accounts for about 25% of the banking system in the country today. And as I said, it's destined to be converted by 2027 to 100% Sharia compliant solutions. So what is that can really be leveraged upon through Islamic finance in a country like Pakistan is that we can use public-private partnerships, which will enable us to leverage on the Islamic banks through Islamic banks collaborating with the government and funding the construction of water dams and reservoirs. You may be aware that Pakistan, like some of the other developing countries in this region, have faced floods every few years, which have a devastating impact on the overall economy. It's not that we don't have water, but unfortunately, we do not have enough reservoirs and dams to preserve this water to be used for irrigation purposes and for other economic reasons that are important in a country like Pakistan. Another important aspect of Islamic finance that can be really leveraged is the Waqf. We can use the Waqf to support community level water storage projects, especially in several rural areas, ensuring equitable access to water and long-term sustainability. Third area of focus in a country like Pakistan could be the risk mitigation that Islamic finance brings into play. So Islamic finance has the unique feature of having a very equitable risk mitigation principles and process through which we can ensure that it reduces the financial burden on any single entity. And therefore, the investments required, and that's in billions of dollars only in Pakistan, could be attracted. Last but not the least is an important aspect regarding capacity building and advocacy with the right stakeholders. So a forum like this can play a very important role in highlighting the importance of investment in water reservoirs in developing countries. And therefore, I would like to highlight a couple of case studies. For example, in Pakistan, we have a dam which was financed through an Islamic finance structure of equivalent to PKR 1 billion rupees, which is circa $300 million. And this was a Neelam Jhelum project that was financed a couple of years ago, and that is a working project as we speak. I also understand that ISDB also undertook a project in Niger of about $200 million to finance a dam construction. So there are very few, as was highlighted by some other speakers, examples of Islamic finance being used for water investments. But these few examples, one in Pakistan and one in Niger of Kandaji Dam project, does give us this comfort that Islamic finance is capable of meeting the needs of investment requirements in developing markets. In the end, I would like to conclude by having a few call to actions, which is important. I really believe that these forums can be really play a catalyst role in making the right stakeholders in our countries to take some concrete steps for moving investments in the right direction. So I have two broad suggestions. One is that the government and the financial institutions should really work with focus and build this public-private partnership for exploring and adopting Islamic finance, not only in Pakistan, but across the globe, especially in developing markets, so that we can really set up or establish infrastructure for preservation of water and storage of water. This will not only provide water for irrigation and other projects, but it will also provide food security, which is beginning to be an important aspect as we move forward globally. The second aspect that I would really like to highlight is the positive and potential that Islamic finance has towards contributing on sustainable water solutions and disaster management. So climate risk is a big risk across the globe, especially in a market like Pakistan. We do not contribute a lot to what's happened globally in terms of climate change, but we are impacted by the climate change that has taken place globally by the use of fossil fuels across the globe. And therefore, it's important that a forum like this highlights the criticality of investments to mitigate the risk being created by the overall change in climate globally. Recently, I read an article which highlighted that 2024 was, in most parts of the world, the hottest year ever. And we are targeting for net zero by 2030. Hence, Islamic finance, along with the climate risk advocacy that is taking place globally, can play a very important role in making sure that we make investments in the right direction to provide long-term security to our people and the next generations. I thank you again, the audience and the sponsors of this roundtable conference, and we hope that we can make this a catalyst for some practical actions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Azhar. We appreciate your answers. By the way, for the online people, I hope you are listening to us very, very well. You don't have problems, and please feel free to ask questions, to write your questions through the chat. We continue the discussion up to 12:30 maybe, and I want to share with you something a little bit personal, actually. You know, like many people on this planet, I like football. So imagine you have a very good team with very good players, when they don't win, they cannot win the World Cup. And here I'm using this similarity with Islamic finance. And we have a potential, we have a market, but it has been underutilized for the water sector. Why? What's wrong with this? I mean, what can we do? This is what. And then how can we overcome these barriers? For example, for football, should we change the coach or change the tactic or the strategy? Or for Islamic finance, what can we do about that? It's free discussion, by the way, open discussion. Anyone who wants to take the floor, please feel free.
From our perspective, so given that the concepts are similar, and probably the larger source of capital is conventional finance, I mean, it can be equivalent. That means the issue of the structuring costs come into play. And I think creating Sharia compliant in Islamic finance structure is more costly than for conventional finance, and is less scalable. I think that is something where standard setters, development banks can potentially contribute in the future to harmonize and to standardize requirements. I think that would be a hurdle to overcome for gaining more scale.
Yes, please.
So I really like this analogy. It's the first time I'm hearing it, but it really resonates with what we experience. And I think the issue is we never had, as you put it, winning the World Cup as an objective, right? I think historically, when we look at the development of the industry, the focus was just around, let's just create a team, right? The best team we can create, let's just create that, right? And that was the essence of what Islamic finance was. It was to create Sharia compliant alternative to conventional finance so that the segments of society that were excluded from the financial services industry because of their values and their basis would have an alternative and would still be able to participate, right? Our whole focus was, let's just set up an industry, let's make it as big as possible, let's make it as accessible as possible. But it was never towards, let's leverage that to tackle this particular challenge beyond financial inclusion. So I think it is a challenge of focus, right? Historically, when we look at the development of the industry, it was sufficient for us just to be Sharia compliant. And Sharia compliant was defined as long as you don't engage in any negative activity. It was a negative screening criteria. As long as you don't do A, B, C, D, you're sufficient, that is good enough, right? But I think the world is changing now. I think people are understanding that it's not just about not having a negative impact, but having the best possible positive impact that you can have. And I think with awareness, across all levels, across, regulators who have to then guide the institutions to do this, across scholars who make that determination between what is and isn't a Sharia compliant project, across the board of directors and investors, people who voluntarily go out to invest in or establish an Islamic bank are not doing it purely from a profit motive. There is a component of, fulfilling a broader objective, right? So as long as you create that awareness amongst them, that part of your responsibility is to ensure that the institution that you are investing in is, positively impacting the society that it serves, all of that will help guide us towards that. So I think that is what was lacking. And inshallah, with conferences like this and others, when we do put this on that agenda, I think we will, push that very, very good team with very, very good players towards achieving that objective, inshallah.
Of course. So basically what you are saying, we should not only have the team, now we have to go beyond that. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dr. Marjan, please.
If I may add, one of the reasons why there is minimal instruments in Islamic finance for water is because some of the instruments issued, for example, sustainable sukuk, although it is the proceeds were being used for water financing, but they are not being labeled as sukuk for water, but rather it is being generalized under SRI sukuk, Sustainable and Responsible Investment Sukuk. I just take an example of what has been issued in Malaysia by one of water suppliers in Malaysia, Air Selangor. So actually, the sukuk falls under green sukuk, under the SRI framework sukuk, but then the proceeds were being utilized to upgrade the water system in the country. So this is one of the examples why. Hence, in order to address this issue, maybe there should be some further collaborations. As mentioned by Brother Mustafa, there should be more awareness in terms of utilizing these SRI sukuk segments for water so that it can, address all the SDGs, particularly SDG 6. It is not only limited to SDG 6, but actually SDG 3, SDG 14 and 15 are all related to water segments. So that's from my point of view.
Thank you very much. Actually, so I understand from you, and I heard this also for Khan saying it earlier. Maybe it's a problem of accounting, basically, i.e. we are financing the water sector, but it is not clearly mentioned because it's under, I don't know, utilities or something like that, and it's not really prominently, it's a problem maybe like it used to be, I think, for the account, for the climate change as well, accounting, etc., for the climate change actions. For Khan, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Thanks. On top of what our distinguished panelists said, I might merely add that as a contribution. Today, the availability of data makes everything more tangible, more understandable, and more aware, like create more awareness. So one of the other challenges that would help unlock the full potential of Islamic finance would be investing in the data availability to track Islamic finance sources and their allocation into sustainable development sectors. So in that case, that will also trigger the awareness of what Islamic finance is capable of doing, and will help understand it better.
Yeah, thank you. To make this session very interactive, is there any question from the floor or from online, please? Please, Dr. Adila, mic, please. She is to the right, please.
I have a conceptual question, to the panel or to the audience. Do we have a map to align on towards water objectives for the Arab region? Do you have an understanding what is needed where and the definitions? It's like the lexicon of water. Do we have something to start working on or from? What do you want to achieve? To inform bankers, financiers, regulators. So you talked about data, but it's more of the lexicon based, so that we have clarity for Islamic Development Bank to plan ahead. So does it exist somewhere? But is it communicated? Thank you.
Mustafa, please.
So I think I don't think there's a comprehensive single source that you can capture all of that information, unfortunately. And I think what's happening is that increasingly countries are essentially going their own way with the disclosures, right? So certain countries are focusing on different aspects of sustainability. Some of them are prioritizing the water challenges that exist. Some of them are not highlighting that. And because of that, you don't get disclosures that are comparable across markets, right? And I think that becomes one of the biggest challenges that we face. One of the things that we see is that unless you have disclosures that are standardized across markets, there's a lack of transparency because of that. But more importantly, there's a lack of comparability because, you know, if institutions are able to disclose what they want and how they want and are not held to an international standard, there is general lack of comparability between institutions. And that directly leads to a lack of accountability, right? Because investors cannot then vote with their capital to the most productive projects. Essentially, they end up voting towards the most marketable projects. So that becomes a challenge. But I think that the point where we should have and it adds to Furqan's point as well, better aligned disclosures as to what is the actual investment and impact in the water challenge, better aligned strategic objectives as to how we want to leverage capital, particularly Islamic finance capital, to address those, and the strategic aspirations of how we want to do this across geographies, not just in one market or a second market or so on.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, Muaz, the gentleman.
Thank you very much. I would like to know if from the Islamic banks in general, are there any restrictions in terms of investing in wastewater reuse, as wastewater is considered as not pure from a religious perspective, especially when it comes to reusing water for perhaps the future? I know that in Singapore today, they are using reclaimed water for drinking water, but perhaps this will happen in other countries. So I would like to know your opinion about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who wants to take this? Dr. Marjan, please.
In Malaysia, I would like to share what we have in Malaysia because the Central Bank of Malaysia introduced value-based intermediation, which is in line with the Maqasid as well as SRI and SDGs. So we have seen the trend in which, according to the latest VBI report published in 2023, early last year, the data was as at 2023 and the report was published last year. There are some increasing interest in Islamic banks when it comes to financing water-related financing. So you can see that there are few banks which have started their financing for water waste management as well as water preservation. So from our perspective in our country, there have been some interest from Islamic banks when it comes to water solutions.
Thank you very much. As I said, we wanted to have this session interactive, not only with the audience here, but also for the, I think, 100 people who are watching us online. And we got just question online, and I would like to read for you to give them a chance as well to speak. So there's one individual, Zoe Dickinson, she's asking, is there a role philanthropic foundations can play in partnering with organizations in Islamic finance to unlock more finance for water? This is very, very good question. I have the answer, but I prefer the panelists to tackle that, please. Who wants to take this? Pardon? Well, very, very simple and short question. We have been doing this with the Bill Gates Foundation only. It's only Gates Foundation now. We've been working with them for so many years, and they provided us with resources, and we are blending IsDB resources with the Gates Foundation resources to provide financing to the water sector for irrigation for health, for water, etc., etc. So yes, it's possible. The only issue is how to reach out to these philanthropic organizations. By the way, I mentioned Gates Foundation, but also I have to mention KS Relief here in Saudi Arabia, who are a partner with us, Qatar Foundation, and other partners working with us in a specific fund which we call LLF, Lives and Livelihoods Fund. Over. Thank you. Is there any yeah, the others, please, gentlemen. He's giving you the mic, please, behind you. By the way, please be mindful of time. We only have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Abdulsamir Bilbil from the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development based in Kuwait. Just I have a quick response to your question about the water objectives or what is needed. At the Arab Fund, we are currently working on we are currently with the Arab region and will launch it at early 2026. This will include a pipeline of the water project in the Arab countries, and this platform will be available for development institutions and the private sectors and everyone that want to participate in financing such a project or providing technical assistance. That will be available. We do have a list of pipeline for projects right now. If you would like to share, we share it with you at early stage. We would be happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the floor? We still have like 2 minutes before we finish. We adjourn for lunch and prayer, 12:28. So. Maybe I can ask you one small questions, actually. Well, no, I don't want to open the debate. Time is a bit short. Yes, somebody is raising. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Amina from the Senegal River Basin Organization. My question is, if Islamic finance has to be considered as an alternative for water financing, what are the global initiatives taken to boost support, communication, and capacity building for water resources management in the context of climate change?
Did you get the question? Did you hear it clearly? If I got it well, basically she's asking if the Islamic finance is considered as an alternative to ordinary financing, can it be used for capacity development for water resources management? This is your question? Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I will not answer, but just clarify something. I don't see it an alternative, but as a complement actually to the because we are not pretending to destroy the commercial system, the existing banking system to replace, but basically to complement each other. This is what I wanted to clarify. But please over to you to address these questions, and we can go for lunch, inshallah. Yes. Okay. So I think yes, it could be. It could be done simply. If we look at our bank, at the Islamic Development Bank, we've been providing a lot of financing to the water sector, and we've been working according to Islamic rules since the bank's inception. And my DG Safari, who was here, he mentioned that the first project in ISDB history is a BAM project in Cameroon, actually. So well, maybe it's coincidental or no, but or it tells about the history of the bank. No, yes, and since then we've been providing capacity development because simply what scholars told us is that any activities which is contributing to building the assets, for example, if you are building a network or if you are building a water treatment plant and you need engineering services and you need capacity development and you need a package of activities around this. All these could be considered, although these are not tangible, these are soft activities, basically. An engineering design, you just do the design on paper, but you cannot, well, it's not tangible, it's not physical activities, but still, because it completes the whole objective, basically, of building that asset, so it could be financed through Islamic modes of financing. I hope this answers your question. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's 12:31. Thank you very much for your time. We had some glitches in the morning, technical was with the audience online. Hopefully by now they are settled. I think this session went smoothly. Thank you very much for your good answers. And I feel we are not giving you enough time actually to discuss. That's the problem with all these events. But I think we can continue over the break and other forms. Thank you very much. I think we've done a really big A round of applause, please. Picture.
Excellent. Before you leave, please, the official picture. And by the way, as they take the picture, Nizar is a very good fan of football. So I was so pleased to hear that he was given an analogy with football about why Islamic finance is not winning the World Cup. You need a 30-goal striker. You need a 30-goal striker. So probably you need to do some searching here in the team to identify that striker. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great day. And we are already halfway through the first day of this great event. And we thank you for listening attentively and for your patience. Now it's time to go and refill. Let's go for item 7. The lunch is ready. Break, and we shall reconvene here at 1400, 2 p.m. For now, can we give a warm applause to the panelists for entertaining us?